I have been going live after both matches, and every single time I get in there and I read the chat, and all of our listeners in the comments are talking about Becky, how smart she was, how great she looked, how incredible it was to see her on TV. So everybody in our little TWG community is so proud of you, Becky.
Man, the good vibe support, can feel it from here.
Oh my goodness, good. I'm glad to hear that. That's exactly what I wanted. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Good Vibes FC. I'm Tim Ewis, coming to you from the Women's Game World Headquarters in Vermont.
I'm Becky Sauerbrunn, coming to you from Glendale, Arizona. I'm pretty sure it's a bit of a whirlwind. I do know I have to go to San Diego for this last game.
Oh my gosh, Becky. Okay, I need to hear all about this. First, Good Vibes FC is presented by our great friends at Olipop, who we love so much. Today on the podcast, we are recapping the first two US SheBelieves matches and looking ahead to tomorrow's match against Japan. Then we're going to give you all the headlines from around the women's soccer world, and we'll go into our inbox for a fan question about our favorite jerseys. But first, Becky, tell us, have you been up to anything major these days?
Oh, just making my little broadcast debut. It's been really great. It's a lot of information overload. And it's not just like the game stats and the player pronunciations. It's also just like being behind the desk, having earpieces in, having a producer talk to you while like you're trying to talk about soccer in an eloquent way. And luckily, the team that I'm with, it's Sarah Walsh, Melissa Ortiz, Shannon Box, like they've taken such great care of me, and they're just answering every single little question that I have, because there's so much goes into this production that I just had no idea about. Creating segments, creating stories. What are the storylines? How do we get the content? Who should we ask over as a player for interviews? Like all these things are getting done so quickly within a match. And so, yeah, it's been awesome. It's been such a learning curve. And afterwards, I absolutely crashed. I'm just like, get me to my bed. I am exhausted.
Like you just need to be alone.
Yeah. I mean, being in front of a camera has always been a little intimidating and maybe like a little draining. And like right before we go out to start an hour-long pre-show, I'm like, why did I agree to this? Why am I putting myself through this? And then you get done with the entire match, you finish up the post-game show, and you're like, oh, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's so cool, Becky. It's like, I am loving watching you. I'm loving your analysis. It's so cool to see you on TV. I can imagine that it's draining. I think it of course looks like so much fun to be there in person, to get energy from the fans, to get to interact with the players. Everybody on the desk is so fun and so smart. So I feel like it's so incredible. But I do have a few things that I want to know specifically, like how it's different from podcasting. Like you have to get your hair and makeup done.
Oh, do I ever? And there's a real difference between like walking around makeup and on camera TV makeup. Oh, is there ever? I'd be like, I just want, really subtle light coverage and like go easy on the foundation. And I will look at myself in the mirror afterwards and be like, dear God. Like,
it's like the makeup where you're like, who am I?
Yeah, I'll hold up the mirror and just be like, wow. Okay. So if this is light coverage, I shudder to think what like full coverage would be.
I know exactly what you mean. Getting your hair and makeup done by like somebody else is always jarring, but you do look great on TV. The makeup example of this is so different from our podcast makeup. I will speak for myself that I very rarely even put on tinted moisturizer to do this. So I don't envy it, but you look great. So it's definitely worth it. What about your emotions? Like, do you feel nervous? Do you feel connected to the team while they're warming up? Like, where's your mind and where are your emotions when you're standing at the desk so close to the field?
So a lot of the broadcast team, they asked me before the first match, they're like, 1 to 10, where are you like on the nerve range? And I was like, like a 9.5. Like I was so nervous. For sure. I mean, your first time, like you just don't really know what to expect. And there's just so much going into it. And to be honest, like you can't even pay attention to the players warming up behind you unless you get like pegged in the back with a ball. But you're just so focused on like the stories that you need to hit. You'll see the players kind of warming up in the teleprompter and the monitors that they put up. But other than that, you're just like, you're focused.
Okay. The other thing I'm really curious about, and so I know that you are en route to the third and final game in San Diego. On these days in between, Do you guys as a group, as a team, review? Do you watch film back? Are you getting feedback? Are you working on anything? Like, is there anything for this third and final game that you're, motivated and committed to doing differently? Like, is it similar to soccer in any way?
It is similar to soccer, but remember when we used to play in SheBelieves and the cadence of the games is so tight? You travel the next day. It's kind of an off day. So that match day -1, it's actually more, what can we apply from the last game in preparation for the next? So you're not doing like a full debrief of the game before because you just don't have enough time to do it. That happens after the tournament. Yeah. So we're kind of on that same cadence where like we're not really watching film of ourselves, but if something had gone wrong in that first or second broadcast, it's like, okay, how can we clean that up so it goes smoother in the third? So it's actually really fascinating because it's really similar.
That's so cool. Well, you seem like such a natural. I'm sure you all are working so hard, but it's coming off incredibly. It's been literally so fun to watch you. And the other part that I've loved so much is how, like, in both games, you've gotten to talk to Lynn. Like, the first game, her and Sam Coffey came running over to the desk and they jumped on you. And then the second time, Lynn was actually player of the match. Go off,
Of course.
So she got to come over and do a whole interview. And it made me so happy to see you guys together. I had a little bit of FOMO, but I was just so proud and so excited for Good Vibes FC's team. What's it like for you to, you recently retired, to still be there and to be so close and to get to see your friends, but you're like doing something totally new? What does that feel like?
I thought it was going to be where now that I'm part of this different world that maybe the players wouldn't want to interact with me as much. But the first match day -1, we go and we listen to the Emma Hayes presser, we watch training, and then we get to talk to people afterwards. The players were so great. Like, so many came up to me and said hello. I got to introduce myself to a bunch of the newer players that I'd never played with before. And I just felt still really connected. And it was such a lovely surprise because I was worried that I was going to be now like this other. But having Lynn and Sam come over after that first game was really touching. And then getting to talk with Lynn after the second match. And it was just like, it was so sweet. I mean, Sarah asked her a question about like, what do you think of your, retired teammate? And like, she almost made me cry on national television.
It was so sweet what she
so
said,
sweet.
but so true. We all just love and respect you so much. And I will say, I have been going live on TWG Lives on YouTube after both matches. And every single time I get in there and I read the chat, and all of our listeners in the comments are talking about Becky, how smart she was, how great she looked, how incredible it was to see her on TV. So everybody in our little TWG community is so proud of you, Becky.
Man, the good vibe support, can feel it from here.
Oh my goodness. Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's exactly what I wanted. All right. Well, let's dive into the on-field performance of the U.S. Women's National Team in these first two SheBelieves games. So first game, last Thursday, we played Colombia. We won 2-0, thanks to goals from Kat Macario and Ally Sentnor. Then on Sunday, we faced Australia. We won 2-1 with goals from Lynn Biyendolo and Michelle Cooper. So as things sit right now, we're tied with Japan in the standings with 6 points each. So it will all come down to tomorrow's late night showdown, which, speaking of everybody, I will be going live on the Women's Game YouTube right after the match with Angel City defender Allie Riley. It's going to be like TWG After Dark. I'm staying up way past my bedtime. The game is at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, so we are going to be going live around 12:30 a.m. Anything can happen, so please join me there and make sure I'm not screaming into the void in the middle of the night by myself. I want to get a little more in depth into the lineup of that first game against Colombia. So Emma Hayes gave 3 players their first caps in this match: Tara McKeown, who started the game, and then Giselle Thompson and Michelle Cooper, who both subbed on in the second half. We also had some newer players starting, like Lily Yohannes, Yasmin Ryan, and Ally Sentnor, all out there on that field from the jump. And we got this really good fan question, Becky, on the Do It Live that we did with Alyssa Nair last week. Christian asked, with the U.S. Women's National Team being in a transition period, how can one differentiate themselves and stand out? And Becky, I really wanted to get your thoughts on this.
If you got invited in, it was for a reason. So I think the first thing that I would say is like, stay true to what got you the invite. Don't get into camp and all of a sudden feel like you need to be a different player, a different person, and play with, outside of yourself. And at the same time, you're going to be given structure. You're going to be given a game plan and tactics. So find your flair within that structure. Like, obviously you need to be adaptable and coachable. Like, don't just like all of a sudden go off the game plan because you're going to get yanked off the field really fast. But you do need to be authentic to yourself because it clearly worked. And I would say as a young player, you don't know if you're going to get any minutes on the field, if you're going to get a lot of reps at training. So it's really like make the most of absolutely every opportunity that you have. If you get reps in training, if you're lucky enough to get on the field, like do the non-negotiables and then work from there.
I completely agree with that. I think there is this like thing that happens early on in your career where you're like, this could be the play where I make the team. And it's like, that's not really true. Like, yeah, you can score a banger, but if you do 99 other things wrong, you're still not going to get called back in. So it's more like trying to find that consistency, do well enough to get called back, show that you can learn, show that you can grow as a player, do the little things right, show that you have good habits, be coachable. Like you said, Becky, I think oftentimes players will try to bite off so much and try to have the best game of their lives. And it's like, you're here because you're good at these things. So just focus on being good at those things and you'll do enough to get called back in. Yeah, so Tara McKeown slid in there into center back. This was her very first cap. She was playing next to Emily Sonnet, who got her 100th cap celebrated in this game. What did you see in Tara? How do you think she played?
Going into that match, when I saw Colombia's starting four, so you've got
Ramirez, God, I know, right?
Ramirez, Caicedo, Santos, Pavi, I was like, oh, that is a very strong, dynamic Colombian front four. And I was like, okay, our backline really going to get tested tonight.
Yeah.
And I think there was one play earlier on in the first half where McKeown kind of got shouldered off the ball by Maya Ramirez, and it led to a chance that Ramirez wound up hitting over the net.
Yep.
But from that moment on, I saw Tara play herself into the game. I saw defensively, positionally, she was very good. I think her range of passing, I mean, she got the assist to Ally Sentnor's goal. And that just indicative of the breaking lines passes that I saw her complete in this match. And so I think she really grew into the game. And if I was a coach and I saw a player grow into a game, I would be thrilled because it's like you potentially make a mistake. That's fine. Everyone make mistakes. How do you respond to that mistake? And I thought she responded so great. And it wasn't even a bad mistake. She just got shouldered off the ball. But
by a world-class forward, too.
A world-class
It's not like it was a nobody. It was Myra Ramirez, who is an incredible goal scorer for Chelsea.
Exactly. And so that's going to happen. And it's really about how you respond. And I thought she responded brilliantly.
I actually love that answer so much. And I didn't even think about how Tara McKeown got the assist to Ally Sentnor's goal, playing this forward progressive pass to a player who was open in a really great pocket. I think that's such a great point. And while we're talking about forward progressive passes and having this great range of passing, we need to talk about Lily Yohannes. I thought Lily made such a stamp on this game with her composure and that passing range and the confidence to spray balls around. Like, I, as a young player, I think was so nervous to really like hit these long balls because I just didn't have the confidence that it was going to go where I wanted it to go. Lily technically, tactically just seems so far ahead of her time. What did you see from her?
I thought she showed really great patience in staying in good pockets. And I think one of the tactics from the Americans was to get an overload in the midfield to give players more time when they got it. And so you could see that Ally Sentnor was coming into really good pockets. And so there was this overload. So when Lily would get the ball, she would have time to look up, take a prep touch. And then you're right. The technical ability to hit these passes, they were driven, they were chipped, they were dying on the grass.
Yes.
You think of the assist to Yasmin Ryan, and that ball just dies on the ground because it had that great backspin on it. And so I'm really liking her in this more deep line playmaking role.
I completely agree. And I do think that I'm hesitating to compare kind of Lily's performance to the Sixes and the midfield's performance in the Australia game because there was so much more time and space in that Colombia game for the midfield compared to when we played Australia, which we're going to get to in a second. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, where that midfield is just so tight and there's almost man marking going on in there. So yes, Lily did great, but there will come a time where she needs to play under more pressure. And I'm so excited to see how she handles that. I think whenever newer, younger players are showing up like this and playing so well, there's kind of like an added pressure on everybody else to also perform to a really high level, including the more veteran players like Kat Macario. Kat was one of the main storylines of this game. She suffered that ACL injury in 2022. Then she had kind of a hard time working her way back. She had another devastating setback right before the Olympics. So she made the Olympics roster, but then devastatingly had to withdraw. And just, I know from personal experience, and you do too, Becky, having a lingering kind of recurring injury like that is just so mentally draining. It's like 1 minute you feel like you're back and you play in a game and you're like, the hard part's behind me, it's over. And then the next, you're like back in the training room doing the same rehab exercises that you've been doing for months. And it's just so exhausting and difficult. And Kat has been on such a roller coaster over the last 3 years. So I feel like also knowing the kind of footballer Kat is and how passionate she is about the game and playing, it must have been like so uniquely difficult for her. So that's why it was so special to see her score this goal in this Colombia game. So, Becky, you just mentioned in the 33rd minute, Lily Yohannes sets up this beautiful textured pass to Yasmin Ryan, who she feeds at one touch right across the face of goal. Kat slides and it goes into the net. This is Kat's first U.S. goal in nearly 3 years, 2 years and 340 days. So she hadn't scored for the U.S. since April of 2022. 9th goal in her 20th cap. And I am no Tierna Davidson, but that's some pretty impressive math. That 9 goals in 20 games is good.
It's extremely good. And I think people don't give that enough credit. She has not played in a lot of games and she has a lot of goal contributions.
Yeah.
It's really like quite fantastic. And it was really cool being in the stadium. We go back into like a back room to watch. And so she scores and the game is delayed from how we're watching it. But we feel just this energy and vibration and echo from the stadium. And we're like, oh, yes, the U.S. must have just scored. And then you're watching it and you see that it's Kat. And you're just like so absolutely thrilled with her. And we got to talk to her after the game. And she was speaking about her journey and how at so many points she doubted if she was ever going to make it back. And so her approach to every training and to every game is extreme gratitude for physically being able to be there. And every time she makes a run or shoots a shot and she's not in pain, she really is like, this is so amazing. And so she takes nothing for granted. And I'm sure she absolutely did not take that goal for granted.
Oh my gosh. I can literally only imagine the joy that she felt scoring that goal. I'm really, really happy for Kat, and I wish her well with her health moving forward because it seems like she's just been through enough injuries for an entire career already, so I hope she stays healthy forever. I want to talk about my girl, Ally Sentnor, Hanson, Massachusetts. Everybody knows she scored an insane goal in this Colombia game, but before we get to that, I want to note something that was so cool that we noticed. There was this photo of Ally, Becky, I don't know if you saw, from 2020 at the SheBelieves Cup. She was just there at the tournament as a fan. And now 5 years later, she got her first start for the national team at SheBelieves. She scored this banger of a goal, and she just really believed, Becky, just as the name of the tournament would indicate.
It's what it's all about. It's about the belief in yourself, the belief in one another, and like how far that can take you. And I love that she has that story. And I think we all probably had that story about, I know for me, it was watching the 1999 team. Like, you need to see it to believe it. And that's the point of SheBelieves.
Becky, well said. Clip that right out. Send it over to US Soccer. Send it to Visa. Everybody, we're just going to use that one as the promo for the tournament. Let's talk about the goal really quick. But Ally's positioning was so great. She was right in that pocket, right where, I mean, really a 10 is supposed to be, but she had come in from that wide position. Talk to us about like her body positioning, what made the pass good, what made the turn great, the finish. Like, what did you see from where you were?
The ball that McKeown plays is perfect. It just breaks so many lines. And the way that Sentnor's body positioning, she's half turned facing the inside of the field. She's not back to Tara. She's like side on.
Exactly.
So when she receives that pass, her first touch is taking her forward. It engages that first defender so she can bypass that defender. And that's when I was like, oh, I've seen this happen before. She just drives to the middle of the field and she just hits that ball so sweetly that it actually is like just keeps curving away from the goalkeeper. I mean, the goalkeeper just kind of looked and was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to get to that. No. But it really, I think, is all due to that body positioning that we actually saw her do in the next match as well that led to Michelle Cooper's goal.
Exactly. Well, let's get to that then. Let's pivot to Sunday's match against the Matildas. Shout out to everybody who wrote in and commented to explain to me the Matildas nickname. So we have all the facts right now. They were originally called the Female Socceroos. pretty lame, a nickname derived from their male counterparts. But before their first Women's World Cup campaign in 1995, the Australian Women's Soccer Association held a competition and asked the fans to pick a new name. Matildas won the vote, and it's this reference to an iconic Australian folk song, Waltzing Matilda. So there you have it. The more you know, the Matildas on their nickname. Thanks, everybody. Sadly, much more sad than that story, the Matildas lost to Japan in their opening game 4-0. So they arrived in Arizona, down under, but not out.
After watching that first match, I was like, oh, they're going to come after the US in the second match, because I have never seen Australia look that way. They just seemed so back-footed, and they were kind of holding a mid to low block, and like, we're used to them being front-footed, high pressing, relentless pressure. And I was like, this just doesn't look like them. So I was really thinking coming into this US match, okay, they're going to have a bounce back performance because that's what Australia does. And to have that first goal scored on you in the first minute, they could have crumbled. They really could have. They could have been like, oh no, it's happening again. And instead, I think they finally found that fight because it got so much more combative. And I thought they played themselves into that game. And as the game went on, them getting a little bit more dangerous, all the set pieces, like you could tell that they had the fight to push for at least a tie.
For sure. And I think, like, along with your point, to also get scored on so early with a lineup that was 100% different than the previous starting lineup for the U.S. And there probably were some players in this U.S. lineup that the Australian girls had never heard of. Like, if you play in a different league, there's a chance that you don't know a young 19-year-old or a rookie or somebody who's never been on the national team before. And so to suddenly get scored on by this group that was a totally new lineup, maybe with players they hadn't heard of, I bet Australia was just like, oh my God, what's happening to us? But Becky, like you said, Australia certainly didn't crumble, which is great. This U.S. lineup, like I said, totally different than Thursday night's match. And even from the top to bottom, new goalkeeper and everything. Mandy McGlynn started instead of Jane Campbell. The Thompson sisters got their first start together. And then 19-year-old midfielder Claire Hutton got her very first cap. And I think what this says to me is, like, every news cycle we hear, you know, we're going to bring in new players, we're going to grow the pool. And Emma's really sticking to that. Like, I'm feeling like Emma, I'm starting to trust her. I'm starting to be like, oh my God, yeah, Emma's our girl. Like, we love Emma. Like, I'm in like Emma's fan club because what she's saying, she's actually doing. She's giving opportunities to these young players. And we're still able to function and do well and win games against quality opponents. So I just feel like Emma sticking to her word about this and the players responding so well is such a positive sign.
She's mentioned so much over the last few weeks about needing to develop this player pool. Yeah. And I think that's something a lot of coaches in the past have always just thrown out because, of course, you need to develop the player pool. But you're right. She is putting her money where her mouth is.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because she kind of pinpointed some areas on the field that really need to be developed. And she pointed out that outside back position, saying, if you look at the experience levels of a Crystal Dunn and an Emily Fox to that next level, which is like a Giselle Thompson or a Sabby King who's in as a training player, there's a big experience drop off. And it would be a disservice to the program and to this team to not start developing that next generation of player, because as you go into these world tournaments, these qualifiers, injuries happen and dips in form happen, like just things happen. And so she knows that should these players, these veteran players, experienced players that she relies on, should they not be available, she better have developed that next generation of player. And so, totally. Yeah, she's really, really putting her money where her mouth is. And it's working out so far.
I know. And I think even that, let's imagine we have to go into the World Cup without one of these really experienced, really talented players that we know. But let's imagine we have them all there. If we have developed that next level, that next tier of players, there's a chance that, like, chemistry wise, opposition wise, one of our second string players will be a better fit against a certain opponent, like than per se the starter. Maybe 90% of the time, Crystal Dunn is the right player to play that position, but maybe for some tactical reason, somebody else is better suited to mark up against somebody or to run in behind the back line to, you know, bring something different. But you don't have those options if you don't have that pool big enough and that next player have enough caps to actually step in and play that position. So I feel like not only does it give us depth, but it gives us options tactically against opponents where we need to like get creative or find a unique solution.
I mean, think about, Sammy, the internal competition, like not even being picked just for a tactical reason, but like as an older player, knowing that you've got these young ones knocking at the door, fighting for your spot.
There's nothing scarier.
You need to up your level. So that internal competition, I think, is just as important to really raise the level and be like, you're not taking my spot. Like I clearly need to like add more to my game. So I think it's just there's so many reasons why it's so important.
For sure. So this game against Australia gets underway, and it takes all of 41 seconds, like we mentioned, for Lynn Biyendolo to score the goal. I thought Emma Sears did really well to help create this goal. She took space down that left-hand side of the field. And Emma Sears was up against Ellie Carpenter all game. Ellie Carpenter is not a pushover. She's a starter for Lyon. She's a Champions League winner. She's a very experienced defender up against Emma Sears, who was a rookie last year in the NWSL. So Emma Sears takes all this space. Jaden Shaw got around the outside to receive the ball on the run. She slotted it centrally to Lynn. I did think Jaden was a really crucial part of our attack against Australia as well. Becky, as you watched this goal, what did you like about it? And then how come like scoring early sometimes changes the whole feel of the game?
It's a really simple but effective tactic to go more direct the first 5-10 minutes of a match. Yeah. And really it's so that everyone can kind of get on the same page. Like everyone knows, okay, we're going for it. The forwards know they need to run in behind. The players who get the ball know they need to play it in behind. And it also is such a warning sign to Australia. Like, hey, if you're going to hold a higher line, you're going to get found out. Because if you look at that front three, one thing that they all have is game-changing speed.
Yeah.
So if you get broken down in one of the first plays of the match because of speed, you now have to completely change the way that you run that line. Mm-hmm. And if you have to honor that speed, you drop that line, it creates space in front. And then all of a sudden we see Jaden Shaw getting on the ball and getting to do whatever she wants to do with the ball. And so to have that happen so early in a match, it's so exhausting for Australia because they know they need to now push for a goal, and pushing for a goal is the most physically and mentally exhausting thing that you have to do in the game, I think, because it's not an option anymore or a choice. Do I make this run? Do I not make this run? Oh, you have to make this run now.
Yeah. So it just kind of turns your game plan on its head, but it's like the urgency with which you need to attack now goes up. And you can't ease your way into the game now. It's like when you get scored on early, you are guaranteed to be so exhausted because you're just like, well, there goes any chance I had to swing the ball around the back. We can't do that anymore. I like how you mentioned, our attack, the game-changing speed that they have, the way Jaden Shaw got, was really involved in our attack. I want to talk about our sixes. We had Claire Hutton and Corbin Albert playing in the sixes, and this is so typical of Australia, Becky, and I remember this from my playing days against them, but they kind of man mark our pivots in those six. So Claire and Corbin were experiencing a lot of pressure at their back. So if you're a six and you're facing your own center backs and you want to receive the ball and turn and go up the field, you're in a really dangerous position to do that because you're getting pressure right at your back and you're in such a vulnerable spot on the field. If you get stripped, the other team is right off on the counterattack. So I think with that in mind, it became really important for us to build width, but then to find the sixes a little bit higher up the field when they can kind of face up. So I'm curious how you think our sixes handled that pressure from Australia's midfield, and do you think they were effective?
I think you could tell how combative it got in the midfield. I think possession changed several times within the span of just even one play. And I think you're right. I think the pressure was a lot. And when we were at our best and we could win the ball back and connect that first pass and then find that weak side space, we were really effective. But Australia really did a good job of not allowing that to happen. And I think Claire Hutton and Corbin Albert, I think they grew into the match a little bit when it came to being able to handle that pressure. I think sometimes it's not receiving that first pass off a center back, but having the ball bounce beyond them so that they can actually be facing forward as opposed to facing back. And so I think just finding ways to get on the ball in better positions was really important. And Emma made a point of saying in one of the Matchday -1 pressers that there should never be any straight passes or square passes into the sixes. And so if that's happening, that's a sign oh no, we're under a lot of pressure. Things are not going the right way. And so I think there were times when they were put under a lot of pressure when maybe that needed to be bypassed first. But man, you could tell that it was so combative in there.
Oh my gosh, for sure. I think that the midfield battle, US versus Australia, is always really combative and always really tight. And it's just a good matchup. I did think that Claire Hutton showed a lot of signs of like positive positioning. She's only 19. She did have this assist where in the 68th minute, she played what was a really sharp, great straight pass, broke a bunch of lines into Ally Sentnor. Ally Sentnor again with the incredible body positioning, beats her defender. And then, it was Ally Sentnor's touch that fell to Michelle Cooper, who was able to slot it home. An opportunistic goal, but it was her very first for the U.S. Women's National Team. So I'm thrilled for Michelle Cooper, though Ally Sentnor was very instrumental in making that goal happen. And we talked about that with Ally's goal in the Colombia game as well. And I'm just finding that her habits and her positioning and her instincts are looking really strong to me.
Yeah, I loved that positioning. And as she took that touch, I was like, it's happening again. And it was basically the same thing where she's just closer to goal now. And so she's side on, gets the ball, engages that first defender, cuts inside again. And yeah, Michelle Cooper is just there. And it's really fun that I got to see this goal after having talked to the technical staff on Matchday -1, because they talked a lot about the final third and when it's time to go fast and when it's time to recycle the ball. And that was an example of a goal where they recycled it. And so you see Claire Hutton in good positioning, allowing that back pass to get to her. And then she plays that progressive pass forward. And that doesn't happen if you just force a ball in from across at a wide angle. So it's really cool to see the fruition of something that they clearly have been working on.
Did you or any of your friends in the broadcast booth, I'm imagining that you guys just have this like round table of discussion and you're like having these very high level chats behind the scenes about tactics and like what the team's going to do, and that maybe you guys just have some genius ideas. And so I wanted to make sure to ask about the goalkeeper position. Did any of your conversations, or is anybody's opinion kind of leaning one way or the other, thinking that somebody else is going to get brought in between Mandy McGlynn and Jane Campbell? Or do we just not have enough information yet?
Not enough information yet. I think if you look at Jane Campbell's performance in the Colombia match, there were 0 shots on goal from Colombia. She did not have a lot to do. And then you look at Mandy McGlynn's performance against Australia. She had a lot to do. She had to come claim a lot of crosses. She had to play out of extreme pressure with her feet at times. Mm-hmm. And so I think it'll be telling who gets to start this last match. And I'm interested in who's going to get called in this next FIFA window. I think you've got Fallon, who is playing well and training well, apparently, by all means. So I just think there's not enough information, not enough of a fair comparison to give one player the edge over the other.
Well, I agree with you. I knew that we didn't have enough information, but I wanted to see if I could get you to say something juicy anyways.
Thanks, Sam.
Speaking of juicy, that brings us to our Olipop gut check of the week. I'm going to open mine.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't pack one.
That's okay, Becky. I completely understand. You are on the road, but you're probably pretty jealous at my ginger lemon.
Extremely. I actually tried that one the other day. It's really good.
It's so good. It's like, it's delish. I freaking love it. Okay. I feel like coming into this tournament, it's a lot of new players in this roster. It's the start of a new cycle. I feel like I kind of expected that we might have some growing pains. We knew we were going to see a lot of experimentation, but I was like warning myself, like, we might not win every game. And like, how are we going to react to that? It's not going to be the end of the world. All of these things, telling myself over and over. But we've won 2 games. I feel like our young players are showing nothing but promise. And we're like meeting these challenges head on. And actually, to me, in a lot of ways, exceeding expectations for where we should be in the cycle. So the Olipop gut check of the week is this next generation of players just better than ever?
It's a scary, talented group. And if I were any other country, I'd be looking at the US pool and just being like, come on. I do think this next game against Japan, who clearly firing on all cylinders, playing super well with really great players, I think this is going to be the true test of SheBelieves to see where this player pool is at. And it's cool because I've been listening to a lot of these newer, less experienced players talk about their experience in the NWSL and how playing with some of the best in the world day in and day out has really gotten them ready for this level. So I think it's a testament to the NWSL as well that these players are performing as well as they are at this top level.
I totally agree. Kling and I were talking about this on the live show after the Australia game. I hope that this next generation is better than ever before, because I think that would kind of be complementary to all the players who came before to ensure and fight for their resources and their access to better facilities, better coaches. Just even this whole trend of the NWSL is a place where 18-year-olds can go to play and make a real living wage. So the whole change in the college system and just getting these players into professional environments sooner, having that be safe, having that be a reasonable thing for them to do, I think would be complementary to all of us who fought to make conditions better. And everything we fought for was to ensure that this next generation could be better than ever. So I would be thrilled. I think that they are so good. And I'm so excited to see like where they're playing and what they have access to, how that can make the game grow to even new heights. So this was our Olipop Gut Check of the Week, brought to us by our great friends at Olipop. Let us know in the comments if you agree that this young generation is better than ever. We would love to hear from you. Okay, so the first 2 match days are in the books. It's all coming down to this final game against Japan. We are going to break down how they've been playing and what we need to do in order to win right after this break. Welcome back, everybody. So we have one more match day left with the U.S. playing Japan, and currently as things sit, we've each won both of our games, but Japan leads in goal differential. That means if we tie in our final game against Japan, Japan will win the whole tournament. So the U.S. needs to win if they want to take home their 8th SheBelieves, and the stakes for the Sonnet Believes Cup have never been higher. Colombia and Australia will be facing each other in what we might call like a consolation game, but it's kind of more like a game for pride. I think both of them are going to obviously not want to leave the U.S. 0-3. So I want to take a moment to talk about something that Melissa Ortiz spoke about on the broadcast during the U.S. versus Colombia game. Melissa Ortiz, who used to play on the Colombian national team, actually revealed that Colombian players get paid $80 per day on an international trip. So for their work and travel during SheBelieves, the players will receive the equivalent of $800 US total. In comparison, and obviously, the U.S. players are some of the highest paid women's footballers. The U.S. players get $8,000 per game plus a $10,000 bonus if they win. So with the 2 wins that they have so far, the U.S. players have made $36,000, and then they have another $18,000 on the table tomorrow night. Becky, there was a lot of reactions to this, rightly so. I think I want to hear your thoughts on the discrepancy and how you're thinking about, like, obviously the global game is growing and blossoming, but what do you feel when we get reminded of really unfair wages like this that the Colombian national team are facing?
I just think that the investment in the women's game is not at all comparable to the growth and the eyes and just like the awesomeness that is the women's game. It's just not tracking at the right speed. And it just goes to show how far we still have on the global stage when it comes to the women's game. If a team like Colombia, who is pretty consistently qualifying for major world tournaments, who have clearly and doing well, exactly, like clearly showing that they can hang and even beat some of the best teams in the world, that if their federation is paying them that amount of money for a great tournament like SheBelieves, just how big the gap is. And as the U.S. team, we always knew that when we achieved equal pay, that the next step was how do we get the rest of the world on the same page and how do we help these teams and these federations in their own wage struggles. And the U.S. needs to keep being trailblazers and setting these trends because, like we said earlier, like you need to see it to believe it, that you can point to the U.S. team and to the federation and be like, well, they do it and it's working. So how do we replicate this model? It's so important that we keep these eyes and these stories alive and like use our voices to keep putting pressure on these federations to invest in these teams because clearly these are great teams. And it's a scary thought to think like, hey, Colombian Federation, if you invest in this women's team, if you give them the resources that they need where they can focus on just the soccer, how crazy good they could be.
I know. It really is incredible. And so obviously I was so glad that Melissa Ortiz shared that information. I didn't know that their wages were so low. And I think it is an eye-opening statistic, especially when compared to what the U.S. players are making. The U.S. players also fought very hard to have those kinds of bonuses available. But it was really eye-opening. And obviously all of us want to see federations supporting their athletes in the way that they deserve. To your point, Becky, Colombia has done so much with so little. And their performance and growth over the last few years has been remarkable. So with more investment and more respect from their federation, the potential for this team will also continue to grow. So far in this tournament, neither Australia nor Colombia have been able to match up against Japan. Japan has just been such a well-oiled machine. Tight, tactical passes, good communication. On our TWG Live after the US game, Kling described Japan as having kind of a hive mind, which feels like such a great way to put it because they're all just so aligned on what they're trying to do. It feels like they just understand exactly the goal of each pass and where each one needs to move in order to be available for the next pass. But we should expect them all to be on the same page because this roster has been playing together for some time.
That's exactly the right way of saying it. When you watch how fluid they are, their formation, you know, when they put up a graphic and it says like, oh, they're playing a 4-4-2, that is more of a guideline than an actual like statement because they really just know where the spaces are, how to get there. And I love watching a player on the ball get pressed and seeing the movement from those around to get into those spaces to be able to break that pressure. It's such beautiful movement, and it's what makes them so difficult to defend because they have such great push-pull movements and they just pull you out of the position that you want to be in, and then they capitalize on that space. They're just so good about manipulation.
Yeah, it feels like they just understand the game on a deeper level, and I say that as somebody who struggled playing against them my entire career. Japanese forward Mina Tanaka scored 2 goals in Japan's first game against Australia, then 2 more against Colombia, a header and a penalty kick. So she's leading this tournament in goals, and she's certainly a player to look out for on Wednesday. Becky, besides stopping Tanaka from scoring 2 goals, what else do we need to do in order to compete with and beat Japan?
So Japan defends with a lot of numbers around the ball. So when we win the ball as Americans, we need to connect that first pass and get the ball to these open spaces because that's where we thrive and where Japan struggles a little bit more if you get them isolated in these 1v1 situations. And so you look back at that Australia game where it was so combative in that midfield. I think something that they're going to need to apply from that game into the Japanese game is where can we connect that first pass? How do we break that first line of pressure? Because you best believe that there's going to be a lot of Japanese players around the ball when possession turns over. And so it's really about like who can put their foot on the ball, where's the composure, where's the space, and how do we get there?
Do you have any specific players in mind that would be most effective at that? Or even any like roster combinations? Are there any players that you want to see playing together?
I really have no idea what to expect. I think I would love to see a mesh of experience and not as experienced. Like I want this to be like an actual mashup. I don't want it to be leaning more towards veteran. I'd love to see like, hey, we really want to see what these youngins can do. Let's give them a legit telling opportunity against this Japanese team to see what they got.
I like what you're saying. I think I want to see Lily Yohannes under more pressure because she just did so well and was so composed against Colombia, but can she emulate that against Japan? That's what I'd love to see. But I would love to pair her with someone with a ton of experience like Lindsay Heaps, who we know what she'll bring to the game. And we know that we can rely on Lindsay to organize and lead and be involved in the attack and be involved in the defense. I also think that Jaden Shaw had a really impressive game against Australia, and she didn't have a ton of experience around her. She, I think, would have had more, and she was great, but she would have had more success maybe with some more familiarity or maybe just some more experience out there. So I'd love to see her with a different combination of players to really gauge how that chemistry is forming between our attackers. And I want to see Ally Sentnor on the field. I know that's a lot of positions. Maybe I should just make a little graphic lineup for my wish list, but I'm super excited for the game. I do want to know, obviously, the winner of this tournament is going to come down to this last game. So this is like a final, Japan versus the U.S. And Emma Hayes has never lost as head coach of the U.S. women's national team. But I'm wondering, and this isn't necessarily my opinion, Japan could kind of be the favorite for this game. They're ahead on goal differential. Their team is more familiar with one another. Could our party in the USA be in danger of coming to an end, Becky?
I think it's going to be a great matchup. And it's going to test both sides in different ways. I think going into this last game, a lot of people will say, based off Japan's performances and the goals that they're scoring and kind of the run that they're on, that they probably have the edge against the US. But I have a feeling that the US is going to win this match. They know they need to win it. They cannot tie it. And I think we have it. I think we've got the mentality, the tools. I think there are players that are hungry to kind of put their name out there. So I'm going to give the edge to the US.
I am too. I would love to debate this and go back and forth, but I also give the edge to the US. I just think what I've seen, the speed at our attack, the chances that we're creating, overall, we have been really organized at the back. I know we got caught out against Australia. That was so typical of Australia to score like that, but I have full faith in this US team. I'm really excited to see some players really get challenged in there. And I think it's going to be super telling of where we're at and what players can hang against an even higher level opponent in Japan. SheBelieves aside, there's a whole other world of soccer out there, everybody. So when we get back from the break, we're going to serve up every headline from around the women's game world. Welcome back to Good Vibes FC. All right, everybody, it's time for our women's game weekly updates where we are going to cover all of the other news that you need to know.
Starting close to home with the NWSL, Angel City is getting a coach. Eventually, the team announced that they have narrowed their search to 4 people, some of whom won't be available until later in the summer. So the assumption there is that they are either coaching a team in the Euros or I guess obviously our European club. Should we speculate?
I literally, Becky, I'm dying to speculate. Like, the further removed I get from playing, the more I'm just like, let's make stuff up. Let's talk about it. Let's get wild out here. So we're going purely off of what Angel City GM Mark Parsons said here about being down to 4 names, with 1 available now and the others not available until June or July. The currently available person is the least specific clue that we have, but we're out here on all the forums, Becky, and there is one name that's been swirling around, former U.S. Women's National Team interim coach, Twyla Kilgore, who led the U.S. to success in the Gold Cup before Emma Hayes arrived. Because of Mark Parsons specifying that the other 3 won't be available until the summer, some fans are wondering if Angel City may get like a European national team coach that's maybe coaching in the Euros. It's tricky to find out when those coaches' contracts are up. And yes, we have someone researching this, but their Dutch is not necessarily up to par. So the speculation is a little bit limited. But we did go on a deep dive, and it seems like there are a few coaches who could move stateside after this summer's tournament. Familiar name Pia Sundhage, the former gold medal winning U.S. Women's National Team coach, is just one of the names that fans are talking about. Again, we're speculating, everybody. Pia is currently Switzerland's head coach, but it's probably worth noting that Pia has been out of club coaching for nearly 2 decades, so it kind of seems like a long shot. Another interesting name is Peter Gerhardsson, Sweden's head coach, who has already announced he'll be leaving the team after the Euros. Maybe he's ready to trade Scandinavia for Southern California, Becky.
I mean, SoCal is a nice place to be.
Yeah, it sounds nice to me.
I mean, I've had Pia Sundhage and I've had Twyla Kilgore. I mean, both are great options for sure. I think I've always been so impressed with how Twyla took over the U.S. group following the disappointment of 2023 and kind of leading that new phase before Emma took over. I was really impressed with her. So I would really love to see her back and around the U.S. game in some way. And normally I'd say that it's pretty critical to start your season with a head coach. Go figure. But I mean, we do have examples in the NWSL like the Spirit, who had a mid-season adjustment, and they were pretty successful.
That is so true. Again, this is pure speculation, everybody, but we're out here to just be wild, so let us know what you think. Angel City also announced a new initiative allowing anyone to buy a seat for people affected by the fires and first responders. So through this program, fans can purchase tickets for people impacted by the fires and for first responders, giving them an opportunity to go to an Angel City home game and have that amazing experience that going to one of those games looks like. Angel City is also going to match every ticket purchase, which will double the number of seats available to those in need. And this was just such a piece of like good news. This is such a good vibe. It's so amazing to see soccer bringing people together and to see the city of LA showing up for each other in this way.
That absolutely is the good vibe of the week, I think, for sure. I absolutely love that from Angel City.
I know. It feels really special and beautiful, and I really hope that a lot of people who need some good vibes in their life can go and have a great experience at a game.
And with a little more news out of Southern California, this was the final weekend of the Coachella Valley Invitational Friendly Tournament. Angel City and Rain tied 1-1, and the Thorns fell, sadly, to the Dash 2-3. The Wave beat Bay 1-0.
Meanwhile, across the pond, things are anything but friendly as the UEFA Women's Nations League kicks off. Last Friday, we saw the group stage begin in Europe. It's early days, but the big teams actually don't look as confident as we thought. England drew against Portugal. Germany and the Netherlands tied. Spain only narrowly beat Belgium. There could be some upsets in our future. More games are happening today and tomorrow with the last game of this leg of group stages being between Spain and England. Only one of them can progress to the next stage of the tournament to try to win it all. So that's one to look out for. This is a tricky tournament to explain quickly, but we found a way to do it in an explainer video, so you can find more information about the Nations League on our social media.
And finally, in WSL news, the WSL returns to action on Sunday, and the big question is, will we see Naomi Girma make her Chelsea debut? The Blues face off against Brighton, and the USWNT defender may finally make her first appearance, and we'll be watching.
Let's go over to the inbox. We got an email from Lizzie that says, "Hi, Sam, Lynn, and Becky. My name is Lizzie, and I'm from New Mexico. I love watching and playing soccer so much, and I love the women's game and Good Vibes FC, best part of my week. Being a fan of the U.S. women's national team and just women's sports in general is one of my favorite things. It's like my whole personality. Anyways, I wanted to ask you awesome, fantabulous ladies what your most favorite jersey you've ever played in is or was. This can be club or country. A fun bonus question is, if you had to make a Good Vibes FC jersey, what would it look like? I love you all so much, and I hope you're doing well. With love, Lizzie." Parentheses, my dog's names are Claire, Francis, and Grapes.
Just an aside.
Okay, favorite jersey you've ever played in?
Favorite women's national team jersey was the Bomb Pop.
Oh, yeah.
So it looks like the popsicle. So had like the top was blue, the middle stripe was white, and then the bottom was red. And then you could like wear red shorts and then different colored socks. I loved that national team jersey. And I was going through my box of jerseys, and I think I gave all of mine away at some point because I do not have the Bomb Pop, and it is my all-time favorite.
I know. It's actually crazy. I was looking for a jersey recently. I have no idea if I even have like any. Like, I think
gave them all away.
I think I've given them all away, and now I'm kind of, oh, well, I have this one.
I mean, signed by all of us. You can't give that away.
If you're listening to this on audio, I am pointing to the jersey, my World Cup jersey hanging behind me that is signed by the whole team. So I think I'm going to have to go with that one. I just have such good memories in that jersey. And Becky, do you remember the video when they added the 4th star and I was just absolutely bawling my eyes out? Like, that is just truly one of my favorite memories ever. So the 2019 World Cup jerseys, Lizzie, those are mine. If we had to make a Good Vibes jersey,
I mean, we've got our badge. If you buy our gear, we've already got the badge on there. And so I'm thinking like a light blue with stripes of maybe like a lighter yellow.
Yeah.
As like the accent color, because it's like sun rays, the sun on our badge. What do you think?
I love it. And I love stripes. I want stripes.
I know, right? Okay, perfect.
Oh my God. We'll have to check with Lynn, but it's 2 against 1.
Yep. Sorry, Lynn.
Okay, Lizzie, thank you so much for writing in. Don't forget, everybody, you can email us with questions at womensgamemib@menandblazers.com. Send us a question. The sillier, the better. I tend to pick the silly ones because I want to just giggle with my friends. I'm so sad. This is the end of the show, Becky. Every time we make a whole podcast, I'm just like, go us.
Go us. How do we do this?
I don't know.
A lot of help.
A lot of help, but it is literally so fun. And I'm just like, we're out here making podcasts. It's incredible. I want to leave our listeners with a good vibe. And I would love to go first if you'll have me.
By all means.
I got hooked. I'm watching Traitors. I'm obsessed. I'm having one of those things where I don't want to do anything else except watch Traitors. Like right now, I'm like itching to go watch. So I don't want to hurry this along too much, but I love it so much. And it's my good vibe. And I think everybody should watch.
Okay. I don't know what Traitors is. Is it a reality or is it?
Yeah,
what is it?
It's reality. It's like a reality game show where like players from Survivor, Big Brother, and then also just like random, like Chriselle from Selling Sunset is on it. Tom Sandoval from Vanderpump Rules is on it. And I don't watch all reality TV, so like I don't know a lot of the housewives and I don't know some of the shows, but like Wes from The Challenge is on it. Like it's like so like even Wes from The Challenge, right?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Somehow.
Yeah, so it's literally so good. And then have you ever played Mafia?
Oh, yeah, I have played Mafia before.
It's like exactly that, but it's like in real life.
Oh, I might have to check this out.
It's literally so good, Becky. I think it's on Peacock. I think you can like get them all on Peacock, and that's how I've been watching it. And I'm like, you just got to watch. It's my good vibe. Like, it's a big deal. It's my good vibe. It's so good.
So this isn't my good vibe, but I've been like that with ER. I never watched it when it was out when we were younger, and I'm just binging ER.
Becky, that is like so random, but like I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, it's just a really great show. Okay,
Aren't
my
there,
good vibe.
50 seasons of ER?
There's a lot. I am well within season 2, and I probably started like 2 weeks ago. But my good vibe, I think, has just been this whole past week of trying something new and putting myself out there and being scared, but like doing it anyway. As you know, when people retire, you're just like not really sure what you can do next. Like, are you going to be or love something as much as you loved playing soccer? And I don't know if I'm going to love broadcasting as much as I loved playing soccer, but the fact that I'm even putting myself out there in a position to find out, I'm just really proud of myself. I think it's good to be scared, and it's also good to remind yourself that you're also brave.
Becky, that is so awesome. I'm so proud of you. That's such a great good vibe to also send out to our listeners and just be like, none of us know the future, and it's really great to try something new and challenge yourself, and good things will come.
Hopefully. We'll find out.
Hopefully. Well, Becky, that was amazing. This is it for this week's episode of Good Vibes FC. Please subscribe. Please double check that you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, it helps us out a lot. And we really don't ever want you to miss an episode because they're just all so special. So this show is available wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're on social media at Women's Game MIB. It would also be really helpful if you could give us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts. We might just read the most creative reviews on a future episode. Coming up later this week, we have a TWG Live tomorrow night after the U.S. Women's National Team versus Japan. SheBelieves Showdown. That's catchy. Joining us is Angel City defender Ally Riley. I am so excited to talk to Ally. Then on Thursday, we'll have a Friendlies interview dropping with Crystal Dunn. She tells us all about what she and Marcel are enjoying the most about France and PSG. Hint, it is a pastry, but I'm going to make you wait to find out. All right, everybody, this is our podcast. Goodbye.
I'm Becky Sauerbrunn.
And I'm Sam Mewis. Love you all so much.
Bye.